like to bring this meeting to order. Bonjour, député témoin.
Good morning, everyone.
Mr. Paul Sauvé and Michel Dorval. They have 10 minutes for presentation, and I'll call upon Mr. Sauvé to commence with his presentation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Sauvé. I would immediately beckon this committee to stop my time for, we have learnt about 20 minutes ago of the passing of Michel Dorval, Jean Dorval's father. Michel, to my left, had asked for a continuance of this committee on Friday at my request and was denied, so I would appreciate a moment of silence before we begin to honor the death of his 85-year-old father, who passed away 20-some-odd minutes ago, Jean Dorval.
Colleagues, if we could just respect that minutes of silence for a moment, please. Thank you, colleagues. Mr. Sauvé, before you make a presentation, Mr. Cordair has a point of order.
Mr. Chair, I would appreciate it if our witness were to be sworn in this morning, please.
Witnesses, do colleagues want the witness sworn? Yes, please. Thank you.
Sur la Bible, oui, ça fait. Une main sur la Bible. Oui, d'accord. C'est le texte ici. Celui-là. Oui. Je, Paul Sauvé, jure de dire dans mon témoignage la vérité, toute la vérité.
I swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you, Mr. Dorval. We look forward to your presentation.
I will ask this committee to have permission to present my PowerPoint presentation that is available on the screen.
Yeah. I don't see anything out of order in that. Thank you.
I fail to understand you, sir.
It's in order. That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen Sauvé Canadian Construct Masonry Corporation is a family business that is 54 years of age, that has been practicing the art of masonry across this great country. It was founded by my grandfather Albert and pursued by my father Maurice, and has had many involvements in construction across Canada. A brief history would show that in 2004 we were awarded the restoration of the CSIS building in Montreal, cleared by security and all forces at Public Works, to be awarded a $5.2 million contract. Next is the St. James Tower restoration project in Montreal that was underway from the year 2001 to 2006, one of the most prestigious and historically relevant churches in Canada that was restored by our firm, with many involvements with public-private partnerships with the Quebec government and the City of Montreal. The next slide is a slide of the Hudson Bay Corporation, Canada's largest retailer, second in the world, for which we were awarded a $29 million campaign to restore all of the flagship stores and historical properties across Canada. The campaign was of a $29 million nature. Our operations span to this day, irregardless of the difficulties that have been brought upon us from the loss of this great contract here and of the City Hall in Montreal across the country with offices in Montreal to Victoria. Irregardless of the difficulties that we've suffered just to dispel some of the queries that we had to file for bankruptcy and had disappeared from the map, which is not correct, we are in full operation and would like to remind you of what we did last summer. I will show you some activities in Toronto, in Winnipeg, in Montreal, in Vancouver, and in Victoria, British Columbia. I would like to break the ice on the St. James Church project and to discuss about the great controversy or the great injustice that was rest upon my family's company to bear the complete costs of the $4.7 million cost overruns shared normally by all parties involved, which was the Quebec government, the City of Montreal. On your left of the picture, you could see Jacques Chagnon from the Ministry of Sécurité Publique and a slew of ministers from the Quebec government, as well as the Mayor of Montreal, Lynn Beauchamp, Jean-Marc Fournier, and a few others. This picture is from 2004 at the grand opening of the project. I would like to attract your attention on why we hired a lobbyist when it came the time to do the tower project here. In 1994, and this is the wrong slide, Mr. Matthews. No, that's mine. I'm sorry. I have mistaken. I'd like to attract your attention to the picture of Reverend Arlen Bonner, who was involved as a partner in the project of the restoration of St. James, and who did not share in the burden of the costs of $4.7 million, but I am told has received as of late from the Quebec government close to $1 million that have not been redispersed to the coffers of my family's corporation. As you can well imagine, a $4.7 million cost overrun during the St. James project led us to ask for some help to financial partners. And I would like to dispel the issues that surround myself and others in my family regarding to the involvement of the FTQ and more precisely their quote-unquote partners, the Hells Angels. We asked for help after the complete failure and loss of $4.7 million from one of the most trusted sources of union pension fund monies in the country, and we were invaded by this particular gentleman that has been, as of late, arrested. I'll skip the picture. I'll then talk to you about the Projet de l'Hôtel de Ville. The Mayor of Montreal believed, and I've been told this, that in order for us to get back on our feet, the restoration of City Hall could be a potential project to get us working again. And so we did. And we bid competitively, and other than the fact that we had to get through a great deal of loopholes to win this bid, qualify in a cross-country competition. Once we were awarded this bid, we discovered that one of the companies that was involved to do the roof that had been disqualified in the tender package had to be reintegrated in the team. Well, this member, 3 Stars Roofing, lo and behold, was partners or in cahoots with the Rizzuto clan, as you saw in the pictures and the press last week. So there is a direct link between organized crime, large union, contractors, and politicians. And I state for the record today, for having heard from members of this clan, that 3 councilmen that are presently serving for the City of Montreal, as well as the Mayor himself, I believe, to be part and parcel of this controversy. I will switch to the Peace Tower project in '94 and explain to you why we've hired a lobbyist, which is, I believe, one of the reasons why I'm here today. In 1994, as a much younger man, I came to the Hill with my father to bid one of the first projects that were to take place. It's a great restoration of our great Peace Tower. Upon depositing our bid in April of '94 at 10:30 a.m. in Hall at Place du Portage, we were told by the clerk that the bid had to come in about 10 days later because of Fuller Construction's golf tournament. Now, you can just imagine that about 10 days later when the bid came in, Fuller Construction was awarded the results. Fuller was involved with Carleton Steel, Bobby Watt, who was the subject of quite some controversy here, and Richard Moore, who serves for MHPM, which is a partner of Public Works on the campaign of restoring all of the buildings here, was then the president of Fuller Construction. So you can just imagine that as a boy from Quebec coming on the Hill, we decided this time around, 15 years down the road, to hire some help. And here's the conservative connection that we were told to use. Le Mât des Oliviers, the conservative headquarters in Quebec. François Pilote, best friend of our Premier of Quebec, Jean Charest, Senator Claude Nolin, Gilles Varin, and Hubert Pichet. We got the contract, obviously, because we paid and because we qualified and we had the qualifications. Here's what we found out when we got here. You have an organigram with many players. Public Works, MHPM, Richard Moore, then president of Fuller Contracting, now acting for MHPM inside Public Works' office, leaking our bid sheet to a competitor, bullying himself to try to get our market, trying to get our job. RCOP Architects, no collaboration. Rive, same. Engineers. There was no way in hell that we could make it through this unscathed, irregardless of all the other difficulties which I've just explained to you a minute ago. I'll give you some of the explanations for which Public Works seems to think that we were not to par. It took us 8 weeks to get electricity to our latrines and our construction shacks. 2 months when we got on the Hill. 7 months of quibbling over our schedule. 1 month for having been given erroneous civil engineering plans of a tunnel that we dug out that didn't exist, but that was there. 2 months of delay because of misplaced piles and no plans coming to remediate. Obviously slow payment, affecting our cash flow greatly, which led to our most recent financial difficulties, and a slew of road closures that didn't help us in the matter. Then came the mediator to try to help, hired by Public Works, best friend of Norm Gluberman, president of RCOP Architecture, Mr. Howie Clavier, who visited City Hall and made it very clear that the Crown would invoke our bonding company, La Capitale, to come finish the job. And since there was cross-collateralization between both projects, obviously the City Hall project would get hit and hurt by that same token. So a cyclical effect of having been taken our project away here also led for our bonded project in Montreal to be taken away. 2 of the greatest projects that we had, other than the Hudson Bay Corporation project at that time, being underway. Ladies and gentlemen, the real tragedy here is not hiring a lobbyist. The real tragedy here is that this work that has been overly complicated by a slew of folks that work for Public Works, either through consultants or direct offices, lead this work to cost about $6 billion, where it could cost just about under $1 billion. We have the competency to prove that, and yet we've been made astray of being able to prove that point. We've never had a chance. I sit here today humbled by this whole affair, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sauvé. Before I turn to Mr. Cordair, I note, colleagues, that the presentation is in English only. There are copies available, but I would need permission of the committee to distribute them. Do I have that permission? That's no? Okay. Yes.
I don't know if it's a point of order, but for the benefit of committee members, there was a number of allegations that were brought forward in his presentation. I'm wondering if Mr. Sauvé would have backup documentation for any of the statements that he's made in his brief.
There is, just before Mr. Sauvé answered this particular point, these bullet points are bilingual, so are distributable. And that does speak to your issue.
Is that the backup documentation?
Yes.
Thank you.
These could be circulated. Okay. Well, the clerk is circulating. Mr. Cordair for 8 minutes, please.
Bonjour, Monsieur Sauvé. Je rappelle.
Good morning, Mr. Sauvé. I would remind committee members that this is exactly why I wanted the witness to be sworn in on the Bible. So his honor is at stake here. We're here for 2 hours. We're going to have lots of time. There are 3 points I want to raise. There's the question of money, the question of the contract, and the cocktail party. But before we get started, did you get any threats about coming here? No? No one threatened you? No? At the time of the City Hall, you talked about threats. You haven't had any threats since then? Well, since I made the matter public, I think that was the best thing that could be done. Just yes or no. The answer is I didn't get any threats. I'd like to come back to the 140 million. You talked about Mr. Pilote. You talked about Mr. Pichet, who is the assistant and former Conservative candidate for Pointe-de-L'Île, assistant to Senator Nolan. You spoke about Senator Nolan and about Mr. Varin. I note you made your first payment right after the call for tenders. Is there a cause and effect link between the 140,000 and the fact that you got the contract? Yes. Of this 140,000, did you split any amounts? Did you say, well, there's 25% of that that will go to Gilles Varin, another percentage that could go to the people you named in your PowerPoint? How was the 140,000 split up? Well, I assume from hearing Mr. Varin say it on a number of occasions that he was in the City Hall and in Parliament and he walked softly and he distributed the money, but he was on a retainer. So I cannot say, because there was no trace on the money, I can't tell you exactly where it went. But in your view of the $140,000, Mr. Varin told you that it was split up among individuals in Ottawa. That's what he claimed, yes? And did he say to whom he gave the money? Did he give it to Senator Nolan, to Pichet, to Pilote? How did it work? What he said was this. He said that he had close links with Mr. Pichet and with Senator Nolan. But you didn't see that yourself. You don't have any evidence that he gave that money out. He said he had people that worked for him in Ottawa from the House. So when we had Mr. Varin here, Mr. Varin said that he was just your strategic advisor, that all he did was to give out a folder for the job. So that's not true. No, it's not at all true. So how did your meeting at the Le Mat des Oliviers go, that you call the headquarters of the Conservative Party in Quebec? Well, it was rather unique in that from the back of the restaurant, there was someone with a parliamentary pass, Hubert Pichet. Mr. Varin asked me to change tables. I wasn't very comfortable, but when I sat down, Mr. Pichet automatically started talking about the problem of construction companies in Quebec in getting contracts on the Hill, and that things were going to change. And it was thanks to his efforts and those of others that was going to be done. What do you mean by problems? Well, that it was a closed shop, that it was very difficult to get contracts. As a contractor from Quebec, it was virtually impossible to get contracts on the Hill. When you were asked to change place, you were taken to a quieter corner, I imagine? Yes. It didn't just last 5 or 10 minutes. No, it was nothing accidental about the meeting. So it was planned. A meeting between Varin, Pichet, and yourself. Yes, Mr. Varin had said explicitly that he would be there. Did you hear about Bernard Côté? Yes, he was spoken about. Did you meet him? Yes, I met him. And Bernard Côté was then working for Michael Fortier, right? And did he say he was going to help you? That was part of another meeting at the same restaurant where he said clearly that in this case as well there was a problem, a barrier between the legislation regarding the unions in Quebec and Ontario, and steps were going to be taken to ensure that Quebec companies would be invited more to get contracts on the Hill. So, in other words, if you help me, you'll get contracts. What he said was this: things were going to change on Parliament Hill, and that with the Conservative regime, it would become possible to get contracts. So under the Conservatives, Quebec would get its fair share, and that you would get your contract, right? Was there any discussion of money? No. So it wasn't just philosophy. It wasn't philosophy. Varin was clearly at the heart of this fundraising, this fund collection. When you paid out this $140,000, well, what I'm trying to understand is this. You say it cost you $140,000. That was pretty much a kickback or a bribe. Well, look, Varin said hourly that he was in the City Hall in Montreal and on Parliament Hill, and he walked very quietly. I think you had to be crazy not to understand that there was money going left and right. So I did think that there was probably some payouts being made. In your report on Radio-Canada, you said this $140,000, well, I gave $70,000 out in bonuses. So you had a contract. So there was a small additional amount. Well, the agreement that Mr. Varin wanted to have was $25,000 in bonuses for the short list and $275,000 for getting the contract during the whole contract. So that's another figure. So it's $140,000 for the whole work plus $275,000. It was $300,000 in total, $275 and $25. And when he said that he only get $118,000, it was because you weren't satisfied with his services? Well, Mr. Varin, despite his big buildings, doesn't deliver. We had a great deal of difficulty in the Hôtel de Ville in Montreal, the City Hall. His contacts aren't up to scratch, and the same goes here on Parliament Hill. It's a token organization. So with Mr. Varin, you thought you would get the contract in Montreal and the one here on the Hill. Mr. Varin was on a retainer and was working on both fronts, yes. Did you meet with officials? Public servants? During the contract or before? Before. Not to my knowledge. So it was your Conservatives who were working for you. So at no time did you meet with any officials before the contract. Well, there were some calls made to Robert Wright's office to find out when the call for tenders would be made, and that was based on the specification book. Who called Mr. Wright? I think it was someone from our office, either Derek Beaumier or I don't remember really. When you got the contract, there were changes 3 times before the contract. Did you see a cause and effect link between what Mr. Varin did and the others? And the fact that you got the contract? I don't know. I think that there was... We do our own masonry work. We've been doing that for 100 years. So one of the changes that was asked for was to be able to do that work. We knew there was a monopolistic approach. There was a company that was very recognized. So we asked for that change because, after all, We are, first and foremost, a masonry company, so I thought that that change could help us to get a better price for taxpayers. But the two other changes I couldn't tell you about. Thank you, Mr. Sauvé. Ms. Bourgeois, 8 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sauvé, good morning. First of all, thanks for coming in. And I must say, I appreciate the courage you show in coming in to tell us about what happened in these events. So thank you very much. Mr. Sauvé, first of all, after getting the contract on the Hill, you organized a cocktail party. Were you accustomed to doing that, to thank people for getting contracts for you? I've done that a couple of times. There was one for an individual who I think is a friend, Mr. André Boisclair. When I was young, I was involved in several because my father was very active within the Liberal Party of Canada and Quebec. So I saw this very early, but that was not something I was accustomed to doing, really. The contract we're talking about where Mr. Paradis was present, well, who told you that you should organize a cocktail party to thank people? Someone called Gilles Prudhomme, who was the organizer in Bourassa, who strongly urged me that it would be useful to help out the Conservative Party because in Quebec it was hard for them to do fundraising. And so it was Mr. Prudhomme who suggested the names of the people who should be invited. Mr. Prudhomme didn't have a network, but he had a few names of people that he suggested, but I would say that most of them, with the exception of those who came in by surprise during the meeting, were calls that I made, as a result of calls I made and others made to make sure that there would be some people there. When you say that some people who came in unexpectedly, they were invited by Mr. Prudhomme or by people from the Conservative Party or what? Well, I don't know. I know there were the Broccolini brothers, who have a very large construction firm. They came. They monopolized the minister for almost the whole time he was there. And could you talk to the minister about the contract that you were to be awarded? Well, I may have talked with him for about 180 seconds. That's all the time he gave me. I didn't really have much of an opportunity to speak to him. So this cocktail party, it had that D'Americo. Did you know Mr. D'Americo? Did you know the restaurant? No, it's not a great restaurant. It's in bad taste. I didn't choose it. Who did? Mr. Prudhomme did. Or his wife, perhaps. So that's someone he knew. Was he closed to the owner of the restaurant? Well, what he said was this. He said it was a conservative organizer. He was a little bit isolated, and that it would be a good thing if we were going to have an event to hold it there. So tell me this. Did you have any other contracts from the federal government? Not since then. We got squeezed out here. We were replaced by a bonding firm in Quebec City called La Capitale. And before that, however, before this whole episode, we had a number of contracts. The CSIS building, the Customs building in Montreal, and others. So since all of that, have you had any other meetings or other discussions with contractors that had to deal with Gilles Varin, had anything to do with Mr. Varin, Mr. Pichet, Senator Nolan, or perhaps with the Conservatives generally? No. When episodes like this happen, you're a little bit ostracized from the whole industry and from the political machine as well. I know that because I sort of grew up in it. So I didn't have any discussions with anyone whatsoever. Well, I'd like to come back to the amount that Mr. Varin got. from you after you got the contract at the end of May. We realized that there were some payments, some 28,200 and some dollars, and another from some $11,287,000. Those were payments that you made to Mr. Varin? I don't have the list here, but if that was as a result of the accounting of our company, yes. Well, those amounts then between, we have a copy of the checks with the endorsement and the accounting papers for all the checks that were issued with. So there's a request for payment from Mr. Varin, the check issued by LM Sauvé, and then the endorsement. There are two missing, that's all. We can table that if you like. Yes, I would appreciate that very much. But in the meantime, some other questions. It's in French only, however. What I want to know is this. The same old problem. Mr. Varin was saying at one point that all he got was $118,000, I believe, from your company. However, excuse me, Ms. Bourgeois, Mr. Codet, point of order. Can't a check be, checks are bilingual? I think I would like to see it, Mr. Chair. Probably it depends on the name of the bank. Sometimes they've got a name in both languages, but the amounts stay the same.
Okay, Monsieur Greffier. Okay.
May I continue? 2 minutes left. Just this. Mr. Varin told us that he got something like $118,000 from you. And I just want to check on this because between the 15th of June 2008, because you got the contract at the end of May, I believe. So between June 15, 2008 and the 15th of January 2009, there was about $70,000 paid out to Varin. Did you pay that amount out to him? If the amounts are in our books, the answer is yes. So that means that you paid about $140,000 to Mr. Varin. Yes, if I remember correctly. Now, earlier, you, during your presentation, spoke about architects who reportedly did some lobbying of you. Jersovist? Does that name ring a bell? The firm called Gersovitz was a full partner for the West Block Tower project. Did those people ask for changes to the initial contract? Was it them or was it you who asked for that? I don't think they asked for any changes. What I find quite sad is that there is a methodology here that was borrowed, and I studied in Strasbourg, and I worked on the cathedral, and I worked on the cathedral in Reims. It's unique. Here we're working on buildings with a steel structure, and we have to use insulating with heating and so on. It's as though these stones in Ottawa are more precious than all the others on Earth. This is the only place on the planet where we restore monuments, and I'm comparing to the Louvre, to the cathedrals of France, and to others in Europe, which are probably among the most precious structures we have. This is the only place where we work in this way. So we mentioned the possibility of approaching the project differently, because that's how it's done elsewhere in the world. But Gersovitz and our cup, and the tradition that dates back to Fuller Construction with Richard Moore and Company, were opposed, vehemently opposed, and they never let us to try to innovate or put forward another method so that we could do a good job at much more modest cost. Thanks, Mr. Sauvé, Ms. Sauvé. Mr. Petit, welcome to the committee. 8 minutes. Thanks very much. Good morning, Mr. Sauvé. You, during your presentation, you outlined your company. You described it. At the moment, you spoke about other companies that are in bankruptcy, but the one that is in bankruptcy, which one is that? LM Sauvé has been in business for 56 years. The entity that held the contract here on Parliament Hill was the same one with the contract in the City Hall in Montreal, but after the contract was taken away for this project and the one in Montreal, we had to go under the Creditors Protection Act for that company under the Bankruptcy Act. But I'm going to ask you for shorter answers if possible. When, on what date, did you start dealing with the person with the tattoos, Mr. Normand we met? Mr. Petit, first of all, I did not do business with Mr. Ouimet. The National Bank of Canada, I went to the National Bank to tell them about the problems with the St. James Church project. The National Bank was involved in financing that project, as was the Royal Bank of Canada. And the recommendation was, since our firm was well established, had been for a long time, with solid roots in Montreal and in Quebec, to go to an institution that is virtually the only lender to construction companies, which is the Solidarity Fund, which comes under the FTQ. You're going a bit too quickly. You're saying that the Solidarity Fund was the only one that lent to construction companies. I said it was one of the only lenders. And we know that the Solidarity Fund in Quebec comes under the FTQ, the union. That's the one we're talking about? So people need to understand here. So I want to know this. When did you start dealing with Mr. Ouimet, or when he was imposed on you? What date was that? Mr. Petit, I didn't deal with Mr. Ouimet. We applied for financing from the FTQ and the funding arm, which is the Solidarity Fund, and it was toward the end of the exercise in the St. James Church project in 2004, I think. Mr. Sauvé, you work with masons. Do you deal with a placement office that was run by the FTQ for your masons? Do they send you masons so that you can work on certain projects in Quebec? Well, Quebec is the only place in the country where there is legislation on manpower. That was done on, there was the Construction Commission under Mr. Bourassa under 50, so there are laws about all of this. So we try to have a card of competency. So sometimes it happens that one goes to the unions and their placement firms to get labor. But I would say that the FTQ at the time wasn't all that an important player in masonry. It was more the international, which was a very large world union, which had more members. So we rarely turn to the FTQ, more to the International. Question, Mr. Sauvé. You made certain statements on Radio Canada. You mentioned in an interview on June 16, 2009, some time ago, you said that construction, and at the time, I imagine you were still in business, that the construction was infiltrated by the Hells Angels. Where did you get that information? Did you see that in the FTQ? Or what are you saying there? Because that was your comment, Mr. Petit. I would repeat that we're still in business. I demonstrated earlier a number of the projects that we did last summer. We're still in business. And what I said to Radio Canada, I don't have the interview here, but it clearly, in Quebec, I've seen the people who run the FTQ in construction. They were closely linked. I'm thinking of Jocelyn Dupuis in particular, very close to the company called Gay Cranes and this Mr. Ouimet that we were talking about. I think it's all the same. It comes to the same. So, Mr. Sauvé, when you say that they were infiltrated by Hells Angels and by organized crime, is that what you're talking about? When you were talking about on our Radio Quebec that FTQ is infiltrated by organized crime by the Hells Angels? Do you know that? Or is it just because of what you heard on Radio Canada? Do you have any children, Mr. Petit? Yes, I have 4. Not bad, eh? So one of your 4 children is threatened by a telephone call, and when the parents have been threatened, when your cranes have been burned, when you have received death threats, when your cars have been vandalized when you're inside, I think then you would be more qualified to comment on the fact that there's a major problem in Quebec, that this industry that formerly was perhaps better run today has problems, and there are tariff barriers, and there's organized crimes, and there are tentacles in the major unions, including the FTQ, and that proliferates throughout the industry. But Mr. Sauvé, I'm astounded somewhat. You're attacking the largest union in Quebec, the FTQ. You say it is infiltrated by the Hells Angels and the organized crime. You're under oath. I do know that I'm under oath, Mr. Petit, and I would refer to the reports last week. Let's not talk about the reports. I'm talking about you. Are you sure that the FTQ is really infiltrated by the Hells Angels and organized crime? I'm convinced that the FTQ works with the Hells Angels and with organized crime. The answer is yes. During your time when you were bidding on various contracts, including the ones you described for us, did you have any employees or people with connections in the Hells that you found out later that there was a connection to the Hells Angels? To my knowledge, we never had any employees with links to criminal groups. When I found out we had some criminal groups that were attacking us, I called for assistance from members of my family who's a member of the RCMP, who gave me some advice as to how to get rid of these people. That's your time, Mr. Petit.
Thank you, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sauvé, for your frank testimony. And it's very helpful to us that you've come here voluntarily to share this with us. And I also apologize to you, Mr. Dorval, that perhaps our committee didn't accommodate your personal loss, and you have my condolences. But Mr. Sauvé, the picture that you paint for us is actually our worst fears realized. You're painting a picture of influence peddling, corruption, kickbacks, infiltration by the mob into not only the industry generally, but right under our nose here in West Block. And perhaps even more worrisome, if you can overlook all of those things, the cost overruns. I mean, our committee is primarily concerned with getting the best value for the tax dollar invested in the renovations of our historical treasure, these Parliament buildings. And I hope we do get time to deal with the last slides of your presentation, that in your professional opinion, everything on Parliament Hill is, costs 10 times as much to build. And I can tell you that was my observation when I first came to Ottawa as a journeyman carpenter and spent a lifetime in the industry. It seems everything in Ottawa costs 10 times what it costs to build in Winnipeg. We build whole hospitals in Winnipeg for $200 million with operating rooms and 347 wiring and all these technical, difficult details, but yet it was going to cost us $320 million to build a little committee building over here. It had to be canceled. The cost exploded so much, and I'm starting to understand why. But what concerns me mostly, and what concerns our committee, is that at the same time, I mean, at this very moment, Public Works presumably is letting out more contracts of this $6 billion project. And I say to you, Mr. Chairman, we have a motion that was passed by this committee calling for a moratorium on all renovation work on the Parliament buildings. And I'm going to ask you, as Chair, to report, as you were directed to do, report to Parliament that this committee recommends a complete moratorium on all this work until we can be assured that it's not being let out due to corruption and kickbacks and illegal lobbying and influence peddling. Because we had this guy Varon, we shouldn't have let him leave the room. We should have put him in handcuffs right then and there. Because this guy Varon sat here, lied his face off to us about what he did for you, whereas in actual fact, somebody in Public Works is getting paid off to rig these contracts so that it was custom written so that your bid would win. I wrote down one quote that you said, "We got the contract because we paid." I mean, is it firmly your belief that because you paid Varon that money, you got this award?
Having witnessed in 1994 the rigmarole for Peace Tower and going home back to Montreal with our legs between our two tails, or vice versa, we had no choice this time around but to try something different. I would like to think today that it is because of the qualifications and because of the work of my grandfather and my father and my own, but I tend to believe that is a combination of that, but more importantly because of the fact that we hired a lobbyist. So yes, because we paid, we received.
Nobody's doubting the quality of your work, but it makes me sick to my stomach that the way you have to get jobs in Ottawa is to buy them, to grease the right palms, in this case of a well-connected conservative lobbyist. Now, did you hire Varon because he had connections to the Conservative Party? It wouldn't have done you much good to hire a lobbyist with connections to the NDP, I presume, or the Bloc. But is it because, well, no offense. Is it because Varon told you he had connections with the Conservatives that you chose that particular lobbyist?
Varon was suggested to us strongly as a man who had strong connections with the Conservative government, and that was the go-to guy for this type of small cap infrastructure spending contract.
Did you know that he'd been convicted 5 times for fraud and corruption?
We had no idea. We represented him as a member of the Régiment de Maisonneuve, and I had no idea at that time that he had those charges looming on him in his past.
I think most taxpayers would be horrified if they thought that that's what you had to do to get a job on a public works project in this regime. I think it's a sick commercial environment, and to say I'm disappointed is an understatement. It really does make me nauseous coming from the construction industry. We thought fair competition would get the best value for the construction dollar invested. But you're saying you have to pony up if you want to play the game. If you want to be a player, you got to grease the right palms. I mean, is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that the cost of doing business has been propelled at such a high rate that there is no incentive to compete. Labor laws being what they are, prices of wages per hour, cost of goods being what they are, this industry of ours, and it is not just in Quebec, it is also in other areas, more populated areas
BC at the same time
of the country.
The Hells Angels are the labor brokers in BC. We know that.
Mm-hmm. So there is no incentive to compete. So there is a culture that not only propels kickbacks, there's a 5% factor in tender calls in Quebec and a 3% factor that was propelled here by Varin.
3%, that was the
Yes.
arrangement. 3% kickback
3%
would be the
kickback for-
expectation.
yes.
That's, that's illegal as hell. I mean, that's like criminal code offenses here we're talking about. And I know I'm not blaming you for a business to stay, but there are contractors dropping out of the industry in BC that I've been meeting with lately for that same reason. The level of corruption is so extreme, you either play the game corrupt or you never win another job. I had one guy telling me he did 130 jobs last year and he won 2. And he was a second, third generation major contractor too, because he won't use the Hells Angels labor brokers. But that's another story. My concern, well, 30 seconds. Well, I'm going to use that time then to ask you a question, Mr. Chairman. Why have you not reported to Parliament that this committee is calling for a moratorium on all construction projects until we can clear up this rat's nest that we're hearing about?
Committee, I know about the motion, but you haven't mentioned. But possibly you should raise that under other business at the end of the committee. So, thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Regan, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Sauvé, thank you for coming. And I also want to add my apologies to Mr. Dorval. Mr. Sauvé, you've indicated that previously that several weeks before Christian Paradis became Minister of Public Works, that Mr. Varin indicated to you that was going to happen. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
Ahead of time?
I'm sorry, sir. I did not hear you.
You've indicated, I think, in the past that Mr. Varin told you several weeks before our cabinet shuffle that Mr. Fortier was leaving and that Mr. Paradis would be the new Minister of Public Works. Is that right?
Varin did indicate at that point that there was a shuffle and that there was a change of Minister of Public Works, yes.
And did he indicate that Paradis would be the new minister?
I'm not sure if he did. He seemed very privy to the fact that there was a shuffle and that Mr. Fortier was leaving his function. He did indicate that it would most likely be a minister from Quebec.
Okay. Are you able to, would you please provide us with a copy of all your emails with Public Works?
Sir?
Are you able to, can you provide us with copies of your emails back and forth to Public Works to the committee?
I'm sure we could.
Thank you very much. Now, in terms of what Mr. Varin did, does that sort of fall within your definition of the word lobbying?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Who told you that you should go to see Mr. Varin, that he was the guy to see?
We had a board member called Claude Sarrazin, who was a conservative, I believe, at least in spirit, that requested us to contact Gilles Varin and brought him to my attention, to my office.
Okay. Now, in terms of where the money went, would Mr. Sarrazin have gotten any of the money that you paid?
No, board members at that time were paid an honorarium for their attendance to our different board functions over the year, but was not, I do not believe, part and partial of those payments.
Okay, thank you. So after you got the contract, Mr. Varin indicated to you that that you ought to organize a fundraising cocktail for the Conservative Party and to thank the government for this contract. Is that correct?
Prud'homme is the one that suggested that there would be perhaps one, perhaps more activities that had to do with fundraising, and that the first one should be in Bourassa, and that the Honourable Minister of Public Works should attend.
And this was essentially to thank the Conservative Party for this contract?
Yes.
Okay. C'était quoi le rôle de Gilles Prud'homme à ce temps-là dans l'association?
What was Mr. Prud'homme's role in the Conservative Writing Association in Bourassa? That's a very good question. He came to me and said he was an official in the party, some sort of organizer, who had authority to do fundraising for the Conservative Party cause. So I didn't really ask any questions. He seemed to be involved in the election in Bourassa with a woman whose name I've forgotten, the woman lost.
Il était porte-parole.
But he was the spokesperson, so to speak, for the fundraising in Quebec. Okay. So Gilles Prudhomme was one of Mr. Varin's contacts in the Conservative Party, right?
Oh, that's right, yeah. Perhaps I'm not talking loud enough, but it does help a lot to have the earpiece. Okay. Donc Gilles Prudhomme.
So Gilles Prudhomme was one of the contacts of Gilles Varin in the Conservative Party. Gilles Prudhomme knew Gilles Varin. I don't think it was officially his contact, but the two men clearly knew each other.
So he had responsibility to collect money for his party, and he asked you to organize this fundraiser. Where did you get the names from? Someone must have said to you, here's who you should contact to come to this fundraiser. Who did that?
Varin had a list that he brought to the table. Prudhomme had a short list as well, but this was very... It happened the way it happened. I made a few calls, and I automatically, perhaps foolishly so, called upon the people that were involved with the project that had perhaps a vested interest to meet the minister, and they all said yes.
Thank you, Mr. Regan. Thank you, Mr. Sauvé. Monsieur Lemay, pour 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur Varin. Mes condoléances, Monsieur.
Mr. Lemay, 5 minutes. My condolences, Mr. Dorval. Mr. Sauvé, are you a person who goes to Le Marais des Oliviers often? No. How many times did you go there? I went to see Mr. Varin at Le Marais des Oliviers. He's there just about every noon hour. You can't miss him with 2 or 3 others. That's why you say that Le Marais des Oliviers is the headquarters of the Conservative Party. And you were invited to go to that restaurant. It's a bit of a joke in Montreal. It's a place for networking. And, of course, there are a number of conservatives that go there. Mr. Varin, for you, Mr. Sauvé, so you think Mr. Varin is a lobbyist? So you think Mr. Varin is a lobbyist? Yes. It was clear when you met with him. It was clear that he was a lobbyist. Yes. Very well. So it was Mr. Varin who asked for $25,000 to be on the short list for the tower? Mr. Varin suggested that it would cost about $300,000. And to be on the short list, he wanted a retainer of $25,000. So to get onto the short list, and he was going to be in charge of making these changes. Well, I don't know exactly. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and I'm not sure to date that it was beneficial in terms of the changes that were made to the specifications. But you were on the short list, and you paid $25,000, right? Okay. Now, this cocktail party in 2009 with Mr. Paradis. Mr. Paradis, well, did you know that he would be there? Yes. Absolutely. We've now got these notes, and I'm going to read something that you say. I think it's interesting. Financing cocktail for the Bourassa riding, organized by USAF, with Minister Paradis, and this is interesting. Mr. Paradis expected reimbursement of $5,400 for his cashmere colt renfrew coat. You wrote that. What's that all about? Well, look, since this was a restaurant, it wasn't very elegant and very good taste, and the minister hung up his coat on a rack, and toward the end of the evening, he found out that it had been stolen. It was a cashmere coat. I hadn't paid attention to that, but the next day, to my great dismay, at that point the Crown owed us $1,900,000 and was slow in paying. So despite all of that, so I was continuing to think against all odds that this contact would come across. His assistant phoned me up to remind me that he had lost his coat, that it had been stolen. Who's that person? I don't know. I can't know his name. A young person, a young assistant who was there with his driver and his bodyguard. So that person called me up to ask me to pay for the coat. He said that, and it was available in a certain size at Holt Renfrew. I lost patience at that point, and I reminded him that I hoped that the event of the evening before had that they'd liked it. I pretty much hung up. I was very insulted. I was quite indignant at this. And you say that you didn't get a lot of time to speak with Mr. Paradis there because he was pretty busy with the Broccolini family. I'm using your words. You talked about the 180 seconds you had with the minister. What did you want to talk about with him? Well, I would have liked to have talked about what I thought was sort of an injustice, but a serious mistake, that is spending all of this money where I thought that the Conservative government should approach things more directly, more simply, and come across with a new approach and get through all this red tape on the Hill and get good work done at a good price on the Hill. I didn't have time to talk about legislative values. As I said, I had 180 seconds. Unfortunately, your time's up, Mr. Lemay. Mr. Gould, or Mr. Petit, rather, 8 minutes, or 5 minutes. I'll be sharing my time with my colleague, Mr. Gould. I was interrupted earlier. Mr. Sauvé, I'm very interested in what you said. In 2009, you were having some problems with some people related to organized crime. From what you say, and you said this on television, this isn't a few months later now, you say that that was related to the FTQ, which is you say is infiltrated with the Hells Angels and organized crime. What exactly? Do you maintain that the FTQ is related to organized crime and was infiltrated by the Hells Angels? I saw Jocelyn Dupuis, who was the president of the FTQ at the time, and I saw Normand. We met at the same time at a dinner at a construction industry event. I had an opportunity before that meeting to see Jocelyn Dupuis tell me that without the protection and help of people like we met, it would be very difficult on the ground to get as many memberships in people in the construction industry. So I maintain that the FTQ and the Hells Angels, in the long history of construction in Quebec, have always had close ties. But are you aware of a press release from the FTQ that dated the 24th of September 2008, sometime after you started having problems with We Met and you had problems with the FTQ? Are you familiar with this press release of the 24th of September 2008? I don't have it here. If I read that to you, would that be okay? On 24th of September 2008, the General Counsel, the President, Mr. Michel Arsenault, and his General Secretary, René Roy, and the VP said, and I'm quoting La Presse, September 2008, exhorts its members not only to vote for Gilles Ducep's party, but to work for the bloc candidates on the ground. What is true here? Are you still saying that the FTQ has members of organized crimes in its ranks? They would have never accepted that. Do you still say that today here before us? Mr. Petit, I'm disappointed to see what you're saying in this context, because we need to look at the dates here. When we started having serious financial problems and the time when the Quebec government and Montreal did not pay the cost overruns, which were huge for us. So it was between 2004 and 2006. And there was a request for help from the Solidarity Fund, and that's where we met and others got involved. So you ask if there's a political effort to try to deter me or to push me in a certain direction to say something against the union. The answer is no. I experienced what I experienced. My family experienced pressure, indescribable pressure. And despite all of that, I'm here to answer your questions and those of your colleagues. Clearly, for me, and this just didn't start yesterday, in Quebec, there are direct ties between the FTQ and the Hells Angels. I think there's no doubt about that. If the FTQ doesn't want to shed light on that, that's its problem. It's not mine. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've seen the impact on my construction sites with the arrival of remit. So things quintupled overnight. Problems with the CSST disappeared. The officers in the construction industry no longer appeared to cause problems on our building sites. There's no coincidence there. I think it's part of a circle. It's airtight. The people that are in it work together in collusion, and it has a negative impact not only on Quebec, but on the country as a whole. I can tell you that it had a very negative impact on me and on the members of my family. Five minutes are up. Mr. Coder, 5 minutes. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sauvé. I'm going to come back to Mr. Paradis' quote. $5,400 from Holt Renfrew. Maybe he could have gone and found it a little cheaper somewhere else in his riding. Macarrier called? Well, I think that's the name, yes. So the assistant from in Mr. Paradis' office. There's a lot of money here floating around. Was there any money that changed hands during the cocktail party? What I can tell you is this. The contributions that came from my calls to Gluverman, Gersowitz, Clavier, and so on, all the payments were made by check. I didn't see any envelopes or cash changing hands during that event. Gilles Prudhomme is the one trying to put the heat on Jacques Duchesne at the moment. Does that involve the head of the Riding Association in Barossa? Who are his friends? You had a list. Who called? Because he seems to be very close to some construction firms. Oh, I think he called a bunch of people who didn't pay. And I think that the Broccolini brothers, to my knowledge, well, I really couldn't tell you. It was a small room. And the minister came in. He was late. Gluverman snagged him for 7 or 8 minutes, maybe even 10. And after that, he went around the room. I had barely 3 minutes of his time. The friends, Broccolini said it was Padolo, the owner of the restaurant, who sold the ticket. Well, you don't know who the friends of Gilles Prudhomme were? No idea. Now, There's a question. Well, we'll have time to come back to this. There's one I've been dying to ask from the beginning. When you have financial problems, you were infiltrated by the Hells Angels. You came out of that. And you're dealing with Gilles Varan to get a contract here on the Hill. That's what I understand. So it takes a bond. That's the company, the unique company. So with all your problems, how could you explain this? How could you get a bonding from this unique company that had to do some checking, that must have found out that you had problems with your security, your financial security, your personal security? How does it work? Well, there is a close relationship in this whole structure of the construction industry in Quebec between the financial players, the bankers, the lenders, and the insurance companies. So the St. James project, about which a lot has been said, that cost close to $5 million to my family and to the creditors who were involved in the project. Obviously, that tarnished the financial reputation of the company. However, you have to get back on your feet when things like that happen. You have to continue. That's what we did. And to do that, to get the bonding, we had to put forward some cash guarantees to put, and that's a little bit rare because normally it's based on the reputation and the record. But since there was a tarnish because of St. James, there was a big loss. So you had difficulties. Did anybody help you? Did anyone from the outside help you to get that bonding? No, the family councilman. We were just on the brink of a recession. We knew that there were some big jobs coming up in Montreal, so we had to focus on public contracts. So we had to get together as a family to put up the collateral. We've heard a lot about the Hells Angels, and we've heard about their presence in the construction industry and in masonry. They have to get these competency cards to be in masonry. Do they learn that in prison? Does it come from Leclerc prison or where? Because they seem to be quite competent. I know. There's someone called Dufour, who's the union rep for the FTQ, who was trying in vain to get into our firm to push the members of the FTQ. As I said earlier, we were more involved with the biggest union in America, the International. Guy Dufour was arrested, I think, in Opération Diligence by the Quebec police force. There was work that was done by the motorcycle gangs and by the representatives in the FTQ to short-circuit the construction industry to get these competency cards. I think that's one of the outcomes of this, or one of the findings of the inquiry. We'll find out the rest with time. But clearly, a number of people are short-circuiting the system to get their cards. Mr. Gould for 5 minutes. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Sauvé. In an article in The Devoir on the 28th of August 2008, it talked about a firm, LM Sauvé, a family business in transition. From what you told the journalists, you were talking about the contract here in Ottawa. The most recent contract was for $8.9 million for the West Block, a contract that was obtained by a call for tenders without any political involvement. You said that in the article. You seem to be contradicting that. So which version is the correct one? What's your question exactly? In the article on the 28th of August 2008, there was a description of a company, your company, and I quote what you said to the journalists. The most recent contract is for $8.9 million for the rebuilding of the West Tower of the West Block. It was a contract that we got by call for tenders without any political involvement. That's what you said to the journalists when you were describing your company. You're talking about the West Block contract. You seem to be contracting today what you said to Le Devoir back in 2008. Which version should we be taking into account here at the committee? Answer. Well, Mr. Good, I don't think we can always believe what we read in the newspaper. I don't have the article here, so I have no comment on that. On your statements, all the witnesses seem to say that the article is correct, and yet your testimony is the opposite. So your testimony runs counter to everything we've heard from other witnesses here at this committee. Mr. Good, I'm feeling very comfortable here. I don't feel that I'm in conflict with others. I don't understand what you're getting at here. I wanted to know if you agreed with the article. You said you didn't remember. Anyway, at the beginning of your remarks, you said that your father was active in the Liberal Party, the provincial, federal one, or both? My father, for long years, worked with his father, my grandfather Albert, who was a chief mason at St. Joseph's Oratory with brother Andre. He worked for the Union Nationale. That's a long time ago. And after that, with Mr. Lesage coming to power, he was asked to help out in drafting laws on the construction industry more than 50 years ago. So the Liberals were in power at that time in Quebec. In the same Le Devoir article, you said that in your company, you had set up a board to advise you, to help you make the right decisions. And within that board, you nominated Mr. Alexandre Trudeau. Is that the brother of Justin Trudeau and the son of Pierre Elliott Trudeau? Yes. It is the son of our former Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau. So if he's on your board, that means you know him well. Is there ties to the construction industry? Why exactly is on your board? Well, not because... I think he was completely apolitical. He's an extremely intelligent person, someone who had a lot to contribute because of his travels to Africa and elsewhere. He reports on injustice, social injustice, and so we thought he could help us. Help us what? Help you what? Get contracts in other countries or with the government? Well, there was talk about going outside of Canada to Europe, and his network was important, was significant. You said that you came here often. You thought about running for the Conservative Party. You met with the Liberal Party. You met with Mr. Coder. How did that work? Was that productive?
Question. Madame Bourgeois.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sauvé, I'd like to come back to the cocktail party. In your opinion, did Mr. Pardee know that he was involved in a cocktail party with individuals, with contractors who had contracts with the government? Did he know that? Just to answer Mr. Good. There's an excellent Liberal candidate in Outremont, so that's been settled. At a certain point, under Mr. Mulroney, we also asked to take Mr. Hogg's place on your side of the... I didn't say yes. I didn't say yes. On one side or the other. He knew that. What makes you say that he knew that? Well, the room was full of people from the construction industry, architects, engineers, that dealt with his department as well. Yes, I think he knew quite well what he was getting into. So it was pretty clear that he was paying back a favor. at that cocktail party? Well, yes, it had to do with party financing, funding, to raise money. So, but the contractors that were there were all contractors who had access to contacts from his department, for example, the rebuilding of government buildings. So it was a payback of favors, if you like. You bid, Mr. Sauvé, for about 2 million. Your bid was about 2 million lower than your competitors. How was it that your bid was the 2 million lower? Well, our company, since it works with its own labor force, well, the work to be done here should be 90% masonry. It's not been done because there's been other complications with the structure and the mechanics, but gives Canadian Masonry Corp an advantage because we've got our own labor force and to do our own work. So we've got our staff, our employees, and for 50 years they've been working on this type of project. So earlier you spoke about Gersovich, the architects. You seemed, unless I misunderstood, you seemed to be saying that those people were accustomed to making things more complicated. Did I understand? Yes, you did. Can you give us a little bit more detail about that? Those people who are close to the current Conservative government? Well, I don't know, but what I do know is that there's a culture on the Hill to overcomplicate even the simplest things. We shouldn't kid ourselves. Repairing stones is repairing stones, whether they're in the cathedral in France or here on Parliament Hill. We're talking about rocks, we're talking about geology, we're talking about mortar. It's simple, but there's a culture here which overcomplicates things, whether we're talking about supplies or about the work itself or the conservatives, or I'm talking about people who are making decisions about the future of the buildings using the existing inventory of information on these buildings. Everything is complicated. So that means there's more contractors, and the more it's going to cost taxpayers. Well, the more it's complicated, the more expensive it is, and more contracts are awarded. Yes, exactly. Perhaps my colleague might ask a question at this point, Mr. Chair. Less than a minute. But I will have an opportunity to come back, Mr. Chair. What I'd like to know is this. At the cocktail party, where Mr. Pandy was present, and unfortunately he lost his cashmere coat, did you meet any other individuals, other contractors like yourself, who had contracts on Parliament Hill? I heard the Broccolini brothers, because we had these sort of picnic tables in this elegant establishment where we were. He didn't really like it that much. No, not really. I heard them talking to the minister for more than 40 minutes about their qualifications. And they were talking about construction and their qualifications. Your time is up. I'm very sorry. Mr. Martin.
Well, thank you. Along the same veins, at a different meeting, Monsieur Varin took you to a lunch meeting where you met Hubert Pichet, is that correct? And you said you changed tables, and specifically, clearly it wasn't an accident that you met Mr. Pichet at that luncheon, is that correct?
It was not an accident.
And did you read this as being part of the service you were paying Mr. Varin for to introduce you to these people who could help you?
That's what it certainly felt like.
Mm-hmm. What was Mr. Pichet's role at the time? Do you know who did he work for?
I didn't know. He appeared literally out of the boys' room and came through the small hallway, and I was beckoned to change tables. He had a crown pass with a maple leaf with his name on it.
A crown pass? What do you
Well,
mean by that, sir?
he had it seemed to have a parliamentary pass. I couldn't really read, but there was he had a red string around his neck with a parliamentary pass of some type.
I see.
And
you don't remember if it was red or not?
It was
Senators,
red.
I see. Senators
Yes.
use red. Did you pay Varin his $275,000 kickback?
No, we did not.
What did you sense Mr. Varin meant when he said he walks the halls of Parliament in felt shoes? I think you said he walks the halls softly. His testimony to us was that he wore felt boots when he tiptoed skulked around the halls of Parliament.
Well, I hoped he wasn't in his pajamas. But
I think that's the trick that other mobsters do when they go to court, wear their pajamas.
I can only imagine what he did. I knew Varin for having helped in several other contracts before many moons ago. The Army base of Longue Pointe, the Museum of Humor in Montreal on Saint-Laurent Boulevard. He was Marcel Mass's chief of staff.
He was Marcel Mass's chief of staff.
I believe so. So his reputation preceded him as somebody who could deliver the goods.
I understand. You mentioned in your testimony that Bernard Cote indicated that he might be able to help you. Did you know at the time that he was Mr. Fortier's assistant, the minister?
He did introduce himself as Michael Fortier's assistant. He was more interested into the trade war between Quebec and Ontario in terms of mobility of labor.
I see.
And the possibility of us having the rightful right to come and bid on public works contracts.
That's been an ongoing problem, hasn't it, getting the free movement of labor across the bridge?
Yes, it has.
I understand. Well, thank you for your honesty of your testimony. I can see you're trying your best to tell us what really happened there, Mr. Sauvé, and I find it very credible, as much as I find it disappointing, even worrisome, that that's the state of the construction industry as we know it. It's very useful for us to hear this. The idea that the cocktail party was an expectation afterwards. Hosting a cocktail party is one thing to celebrate winning a contract, but this was a fundraiser for the Conservative Party, not just a cocktail party where you raise a glass and maybe buy somebody some canapes to celebrate winning a contract. You understood this, that people were to pay a donation to the Conservative Party in gratitude for receiving a contract from the Conservative government. Is that correct?
I would have hoped to have the minister's ear for more than 3 minutes, or less than 3 minutes, to be able to talk about trade in between Ontario and Quebec, the construction industry, and more so what I felt to be a great exaggeration of how taxpayer dollars could be were ill spent and could be better spent in order to promote more restoration on the Hill. I would have hoped to have a passive talk, and I was not permitted that.
This business about the coat that Mr. LeMay raised, did you see this as a further shakedown by the minister's office that, yes, you put on the party for us last night, but now we want another $5,400 for some phantom coat?
I was insulted. I took a risk of doing this event and took of my time, and would have hoped to have a few minutes, more than 3 minutes, to discuss about intelligent things. And I was not, for circumstances that I couldn't control or that were privy to another agenda, allowed that time. And I was just insulted, downright insulted, to be asked to pay for a coat. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
I'd be offended.
Mr. Workington, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sauvé, you tell us that you had hired Mr. Varin to lobby the federal government to receive a government contract. But you were also the lowest bidder on this process. You also claim to be very qualified for the job. Mr. Varan has, I believe, taken advantage of your presuppositions about the process, taken your $120,000 or whatever, and took off. He wore such slight shoes that he just never even showed up to Parliament Hill. As a matter of fact, Public Works Department has absolutely no record of anybody, not even the assistant to the secretary or the assistant to the receptionist, having met with this gentleman. This gentleman did nothing here in Ottawa for that $120,000. So clearly, I can understand your embarrassment for having been shaken down by this gentleman. You received this contract because you were the lowest bidder, and also you were able to demonstrate that you were qualified. I believe that your work in the past demonstrated that you were qualified, whereas my colleagues across the table, Mr. Martin, and the members from the bloc have consistently called into question if or not you were qualified to do the work. I believe that you demonstrated that you were qualified, and that when you come with the lowest bid and you're qualified, wouldn't that, Mr. Sauvé, give you some satisfaction that you got it based on your qualification and your bidding process?
Thank you for
As a matter of, do you actually believe that you wouldn't have received it if you'd come in with the lowest bid and that you demonstrated that you were qualified?
I'm sorry, Mr. Warkerton, but you had a long introduction there, and I'm...
Well, let's answer the question that I asked. I asked, do you believe that you were qualified to do the job?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you know that you were the lowest bidder?
I do believe.
Wouldn't that demonstrate that you received this because you were qualified, as well as that you came with the lowest bid?
A moment to answer each question.
I do only have 5 minutes.
Would you let me answer now?
Absolutely.
Okay. You're from Peace River, is that correct?
Close enough.
Okay. I think that we were more than qualified, and I think that we still are qualified.
Do you know that you were the lowest bidder?
Lowest bidder is a criteria upon which Public Works bases its final procurement analysis.
So you were the lowest bidder. You were also qualified to do the job. You received the work to do the job. Now I understand that you're disappointed that the job was taken away from you. In your lead up to your submission to this committee, you talked about Public Works leaking documents about your bid to your competitors. Can you give us, number one, some evidence of that, and number two, demonstrate how that would have had any impact on your success in receiving this contract, seeing as you were still the lowest bidder? Nobody undercut you.
That's a fair question.
Do you have evidence of it?
What you need to understand...
Do you have evidence of the...
Then we're not playing junior lawyer here.
I'm asking the question.
Let him answer the question.
I only have 5 minutes, and I
Yes, I do have evidence. I have evidence because I confronted...
Can you table that evidence here?
Sir, if you let me answer, I will answer. I have evidence because when I found out, we were hounded by Bobby Watt from RJW Stonemasons, who has done all the work here, from the onset of this tender, after we got the contract, that is, to do the work amongst our own forces.
How does that demonstrate that
Can
somebody
I finish?
from within... Well, absolutely, if you will.
Upon one of those meetings, this gentleman, Robert Watt, brought with him our bid sheet, which is absolutely confidential information that cannot be leaked to anyone. So when we asked him where he got that information, he said that he has a boat on the Outaouais River next to Richard Moore, who is the project manager for MHPM, who has his offices in the Crown, his offices on Spark Street. I was outraged to the point of calling the mediator, Howie Clavier, and saying, what is this? And then calling upon Public Works, Mr. Ezio Di Milo and Robert Wright, and confronting them with this information that they denied. Soon thereafter, Robert Wright left the project and another gentleman took his place. So there's the proof.
Well, that doesn't indicate proof. It indicates a whole lot of presuppositions and a lot of people denying what you claim. You came in with the lowest bid. Nobody undercut you. I don't understand how your claim that there was leaking of documents impacted the bid process.
Thank you, Mr. Workington. Unfortunately, You don't have time to respond to Mr. Workington. Mr. Cordair, 5 minutes.
Je comprends l'embarras de mon collègue Walkerton parce que...
I understand Mr. Workington's frustration here. He's on a fishing expedition now, and he's not catching any fish. So, if we could see what's going on now we've heard about the Mr. Varin's piece of equipment. Now we've heard about Mr. Paradis' coats. That's going to be nice on the news. We're going to have some quick snappers here. This 140,000, was it a kickback? No. You paid someone to get a job done, but it wasn't a kickback. I paid a lobbyist who wasn't a lobbyist, but you knew that that money was going to various people. I suspected that it might be distributed because he said so himself. Did Mr. Cote say that he spoke about this issue? Mr. Cote said that there was some major disagreement and there was a mountain between, in terms of free trade problems between Quebec and Ontario, and that he was going to try to bring forward the file, but he didn't mention the name of his minister. So I can't say that that's true. Did you speak specifically about your contract to Mr. Cote? Yes. But he didn't say that he talked to his minister? I don't remember that he said that. No. In the attempt at the reimbursement of the coat, you only had 180,000 seconds. That's all you got. So, did you talk to Carrière about your contract? Was there someone in Mr. Paradis' office? Well, look, since I didn't have Mr. Paradis' ear because he was so busy with the Broccolini brothers at the picnic table at the back, as I was saying, I spoke to his assistant, who called me about the coat the next day, and I spoke to him. I spoke about the major problems that we had defending our rights as Quebecers and contractors on the Hill, and that our methods that were more like those in Europe were not at all welcome here. So you thought that Minister Paradis wasn't aware, was aware of your contract? Well, I hope so. So do you think that Gilles Prudhomme, who asked you by way of thanks, that is close to the construction industry? It seems that he does have some contacts in the industry. So ties to the construction industry, yes. In your PowerPoint presentation, you talked about 3% contractors, that contractors are expected to give thanks to the party, empower and organize fundraisers. So you had to pay 3% of the contract of $8.9 million. That was Mr. Varin's calculation, yes. So that's the $300,000, right. And you paid $140,000 of that, right. You talked about RCOP. Can you tell us whether, in your view, the Conservative government has a system for awarding public works contracts, particularly on Parliament Hill? The system is completely ridiculous. I don't want to know that. I just want to know if there is a system. I think there is. This RCOP gang, I think they're out of Ontario. They're based in Montreal, but they've got offices around the country. Did they say that they were organized other fundraising cocktails, this thank you club of the Conservatives? Prudhomme seemed to say that there were to be other events held. Yes, that it would be helpful if there were others. Were you told where? Look, after the coat incident, there was no, I didn't really feel like spaghetti anymore, nor cashmere. No, right. Were you asked to organize fundraising activities for Mr. Paradis in his riding? This $1,000 that you gave to Paul Pichet, was that by way of thanks? It was a contribution. I can't say whether it was by way of thanking, but when you gave it out, was it to thank him or to encourage him? What was part of what we were supposed to do at that event? We were supposed to write a check, so I made my contribution. You had a dinner with André Boisclair. Did you finance the Parti Québécois or the Bloc Québécois? I didn't fund the Parti Québécois. André Boisclair asked me a long time ago to give me a to give me a hand, and I had about 30 guests at my home. People we know.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Listen, I mean, there's been so many inconsistencies in what you're saying. Earlier today, in the testimony, you said you didn't know him. Apparently, you didn't have a computer for Mr. Varan. You didn't Google his name, but apparently his reputation preceded him later on in the testimony. What we're trying to make us believe is that you're just a poor guy, just a poor, ethically challenged business person who really didn't care about greasing and doing things until you got caught. And then when you got caught, you go and come into this committee and throw yourself in front of it and say, everybody else did you wrong. But you know what? It's only because I got caught in doing something stupid. The only thing that you're providing any evidence of here today is the fact that you got scammed by somebody and you gave them $120,000 to a person who, in your own words, you said is a lobbyist who's not a lobbyist. Who did Mr. Varan give money to here?
Mr. Calandra.
Who in Public Works did he give money to?
Mr. Calandra, I didn't get caught doing anything.
Who did he give? My question is,
Mr. Calandra, please rephrase your comment.
Can you make sure that he answers the question?
Mr. Calandra, it is reasonable to treat witnesses to give them some opportunity to respond to your first inquiry. Your first inquiry went about a minute and 15 seconds. So let Mr. Sauvé respond to your first inquiry, and then you can respond thereafter.
My first inquiry is, who did Mr. Varan give money to here in Public Works to give you the contract?
I can't say.
Do you have any proof that he gave money to anybody in Public Works?
No, I do not.
Do you have, what was the name of the assistant who called you back from Minister Parady's office and asked you for the $5,400 for the coat?
It was a young gentleman who
What was his name?
Sir, I have answered.
I just want his name.
I have answered prior that I did not remember his name, but what I did answer, it was his aide. He was with him. He entered the restaurant with him and exited with him.
But you didn't get his name or his card or anything?
He did give me his card, but...
You lost it?
No, I believe I still have it on record, but he was somewhat insignificant, so I did not deem necessary to remember his name.
But somehow you were insulted by this insignificant staffer apparently asking you for $5,400 in quotes. So an insignificant staffer asks you for something and you get all upset about it. You have a cocktail reception. You're upset that you didn't get a chance to speak with the minister, but you invited all kinds of people who seem to take advantage of your generosity. You got taken advantage of by a guy who's never been a member of the party, who in your own testimony was a lobbyist that's not a lobbyist. So truly what happened here is you really got, as opposed to relying on the great reputation that your father and your grandfather obviously built up in the business, you decided to panic and sink into, because you got outbidded or disappointed by how the Liberals have treated you in the past in 1994, you decided maybe there's a different way of doing things. And the reality is what you found is because of the Accountability Act and because of the change that this government made, you got nowhere. But I read an article that said that you want to be the candidate in Outremont. Is that true?
Mr. Calandra, what's the question?
I read an article that said you wanted to be the Liberal candidate in Outremont. Is that true?
My family has been involved in several causes over many, many years. As I've said earlier, I've been approached, members of my family have been approached by all parties over the years because we are upstanding business citizens of Montreal.
Who approached you to be the Liberal candidate in Outremont?
The local organization.
What was that person's name?
I don't recall. Madame Dufresne, maybe.
Did you ever speak to Mr. Coderre as the Liberal lieutenant at the time?
Of course I have.
Did he encourage you to sell memberships?
Never did.
He didn't encourage you to sell memberships?
No, sir.
Were you going to be appointed? I know the Liberal tradition is to appoint candidates. Were they going to appoint you as the Liberal candidate?
Monsieur Cochon, who has a great reputation, was at that point contemplating perhaps not coming back to the scene of politics. So it was a looming career possibility, but having seen everything that went on up here, I'm not sure that it was such a wise move. So I'm happy that things unfolded the way that they did and that I made the decision to stick to bricks and mortar. Does that answer to your question?
Well, did you meet with Mr. Garneau?
No, I did not, sir.
Who else in the Liberal Party did you meet with, and have you made donations to the Liberal Party?
I might have made donations to the Liberal Party over the years, but Mr. Coderre is the only MP that I have met in the course of the last many years.
Mr. Martin, point of order.
I think as the chair, it's really, in this country, you don't have to tell anybody who you make political donations to or what political party. I think it's offensive to put somebody on the spot. And, yeah, well, you don't browbeat for their political affiliations. I think it's a I think it's a wrong line of questioning.
That is probably not a point of order, Mr. Martin. Mr. Calandra has 20 seconds left.
Well, let me sum it up this way, Mr. Sauvé. Everything that you've presented today and all the inconsistencies in your testimony, I can say this, that I'm glad that you're not coming here as a member of Parliament, because I expect certainly a higher level than the people who come here. I don't expect people to sink to trying to grease wheels to
Mr. Calandra,
to make their way in
Mr.
business.
Calandra.
Je trouve totalement inacceptable de la
I find it completely unacceptable that Mr. Calandra and the Conservatives would try to tarnish the reputation of this witness who, as far as I know, was sworn in. He's here in good faith. He's answering the questions. We may disagree, and I know the truth hurts. You're caught in this up to here, but it doesn't do any good to tarnish people's reputations.
Mr. Calandra, it's my responsibility to maintain order in this committee. This is the second meeting in a row where you've made commentary which is out of order. I'm so ruling. I will not recognize you further. I will not recognize the point of order. Mr. Reagan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not recognizing the point of order.
Mr. Sauvé.
Mr. Reagan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sauvé, you mentioned Mr. Claude Sarrazin, who's on the board of directors of LM Sauvé, Mr. Sarrazin, okay? Is that the same Claude Sarrazin who is the president of Serco Investigation and Protection?
Yes, sir.
Is he also associated with a company called Formica or Formica?
I wouldn't know.
No?
No.
That's a different person.
I wouldn't know.
Okay, you don't know that. Okay, thank you. I asked you earlier, and you agreed to provide emails that you had with the Department of Public Works concerning West Block, the West Block renovation. Could you also provide emails you have with consultants in relation to that project, to the committee?
I'm sure we could, sir.
Thank you very much. So with Mr. Prudhomme, who I understand is the president or was the president of the Bourassa riding for the Conservative Party, basically after you got a $10 million contract, he approached you to do, and he was the person who was responsible to do fundraising in that riding, approached you, asked you to do a fundraiser essentially in return for getting the $10 million contract with Public Works. Is that your understanding of what happened?
If there is a link between... Could you repeat?
Okay, well, let's just go through this, right? You know, after you got the $10 million contract to do work on the West Block, you were approached by Mr. Prudhomme, president of the Riding Association, with responsibility, obviously, to do fundraising there. He asked you to do fundraising for that riding, to arrange a fundraiser, and this was in return for the $10 million contract with Public Works.
It was to help Minister Paradis and the riding of Bourassa increase their funding capacity.
And it was a thank you, essentially, for the contract.
One could view it as such, yes.
Okay. Now, I think you said earlier, did you indicate that Mr. Paradis was there and knew the people who were there were contractors working on government projects?
Well, the room was packed with contractors, architects, civil engineers. It was pretty obvious what you were walking into.
So, when you were thinking about who to invite to this meeting, how did that work?
I basically scrolled through my Rolodex of who would have a vested interest into going there and who would be the most susceptible to want to contribute.
Monsieur Sauvé, j'ai la liste.
Mr. Sauvé, I've got a list here of the contributors in the Conservative Party Riding Association in Bourassa in 2009, and it's all linked to the event. I'll give you some names, but you'll tell me if it's from you. Patrick Bellemare, construction contractor. Did you call him? Mr. Varin called him. Mr. Brière, Jean-François, a lawyer. Did you call him? I did. Mr. Alfred Serré, real estate manager. You called him? Yes. Eric Champagne, an architect. You called him? Yes. It worked well. Mr. Clavier, a lawyer, architect, a mediator in the project. Yes, I called him. And he agreed with pleasure. Yes. Mr. Richard Courchen. At the time, he was the CFO of our company. Cameron Forbes. He was the roofer involved in the West Block project. Salvador Gaillardi. That name I don't know. Wasn't one of yours? No. Roland Gendreau. Don't know the name. Alexandre Généreux, an employee at the time. Julia Jurasovich, the architect on the project. Globerman at Arcop. Ghislaine Oud. Don't know the name. Jacques Marquis, the manager of La Capitale Unique insurance company. And it's normal that an insurer would be involved? Yes. Laurent Maurice. Don't know the name. André Plourde, real estate manager. Julie Traîneau. Name doesn't mean anything. Nathalie Robitaille. Don't know the name. France Develot. No. Arthur Steckler. I think he's a professional in the construction industry of some sort, but I can't tell you exactly.
Mr. Varin.
What made me think?
That you needed to hire Mr. Varin to get a contract on Parliament Hill.
Because I knew that nothing could shake here if we didn't have representation. It's impossible.
Based on?
Thank you, Mr. Sauvé, Mr. Reagan, Mr. Warkentin. 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to continue down that line of questioning because, Mr. Sauvé, your story has changed, and I know that Monsieur Gord has asked you with regards to the article that was in 2008. It was in Le Devoir, and it was written by Claude Turcotte, where you are quoted explicitly saying that you received the contract here on the Hill without any political interference. That is consistent with all of the testimony that we've heard that can be believed at this table. Your story has changed, and it's changed now because, as a result maybe of the circumstances that you find yourself in, and you're looking for an enemy. Things have clearly turned sour in the last number of years for your company. Things have changed, and so now maybe you're looking for an enemy as to why you lost your contracts and why you're losing your company, a company that's been built up over generations by your grandfather and your father. You have undertaken a lot of different things that I'm sure that your father and grandfather would have never conceived of doing, but you've now turned to all kinds of different methods to keep your company afloat. Today it looks like you're trying to look for a reason that can explain why you're in the state that you are today. Why has your stories changed since 2008 with regards to the contract on Parliament Hill?
Mr. Walkerton, I'm quite comfortable and quite at peace, and to tell you quite frankly, the best thing that I've ever done for myself, for my daughter, for my wife, for my family, was to come out clean with all of this rigmarole that is in the industry. Now let me finish. You have asked a long-winded question, and it needs to be addressed very specifically. I will get to that.
Okay. Could you get to that quickly, because I only have 5 minutes.
If I had not done what I have done, which was to denounce the violence and the outright unbelievable behavior, truants of some of these people that proliferate in the construction industry in Quebec today, I would not be here.
Okay, and I have done what I have.
No, let me finish.
That's not the purpose of our hearing today, though.
The purpose is to answer your questions, sir.
That's right, and I'm wondering if you are now contradicting what you said to the Devoir in 2008. And I can give you a copy of the article.
Sir, if you were to believe everything that you read that's been interpreted by a third party, I am not even sure what is written there.
It's a direct quote from you, and it says that there was no political interference in this contract.
I don't know what the journalist is referring to.
Claude
All I
Turcotte,
do know is that we hired Varin and we paid and we made the list and we got the contract. That's all. That's
and you were the lowest bidder, and you claimed to be qualified, and Public Works found you to be qualified.
Sir, to this day we are qualified, and the Crown has chosen to replace us by an insurance industry carrier who can't even finish the job.
Okay, the work on the St. James Church went over by $4.5 million. What was the original contract let for?
The actual number is 4.7.
Okay, what was the original contract supposed to be?
In the neighborhood of $5 million.
Okay, so that building contract doubled the price from what you bid on it.
The circumstances
from what you bid
around the building contract, there were hidden issues, oil reservoirs hidden by the church, tunnels that used to carry steam from the city to the building.
So another example of where, you've thrown a lot of numbers out there. You've claimed that Public Works is not doing its due diligence, and then it says it discloses all this information to you, and you say that that's called red tape, so then the price escalates. But then in a contract where everything wasn't disclosed to you, the cost of your contract doubled. So I'm not sure, there's so many different places that we need to have a chat with you about. You come here as an authority on construction, but then a demonstration of the project that you just recently undertook doubled in price from the time that you bid on it to the time that you were complete.
Sir, the St. James Church project has nothing to do with the Parliament buildings.
Well, then why was that part of our...
Can you let me answer the question?
That was part of your...
Can you let me answer the question? You have been very arrogant. Let me answer the question, okay? The Crown has gotten extraordinary lengths to study and decipher each and every element of the Parliament and knows each and every square footage of this process, okay? And even with those circumstances of study and many, many, many years of architecture and engineering, we've been thrown a monkey wrench with wrong plans to be able to do our project here. St. James has nothing to do with that. At St. James, the church or their body deliberately hid information relating to contaminated soils, to tunnels, to issues that far, far, far exceeded what our original mandate was supposed to do. And we carried and we finished honorably, and the project is a Canadian success, and it is a marvel, and I'm very proud, irregardless of the bad ink, to have been associated to it, because it is a success.
Well, we're going to Public Works
Thank you, Mr. Workington. Unfortunately, the 5 minutes is up. I want to thank both Mr. Sauvé and Mr. Dovell on behalf of the committee for coming here. I appreciate that at times it's a little rough, but I appreciate you coming. And on behalf of the committee, may I express our sympathy for the loss of your father. So, yes, sorry.
I noticed that on our committee business, we have it that we'll move into in-camera. I'd make a motion or suggest that we keep it in public.
I'm fine with that. Is that everybody else fine with that?
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you again for coming. And as the witnesses leave, I'm going to immediately move to committee business. Colleagues, if you could, I'll suspend for 30 seconds. If you could come back in 30 seconds. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to resume our meeting. If I could ask the witnesses and the press to leave the room, please. Yeah. Well, wait. If I could just give the room 5 minutes to clear, or 2 seconds to clear. Okay, we have 3 items, colleagues. First is Mr. Reagan's, no, sorry, first is the report of the subcommittee. Hopefully this is reasonably uncontroversial. Can I have a motion to accept the report of the subcommittee? Moved. Any conversation, debate about the report of the subcommittee? Pardon?
On n'a pas besoin
Okay.
d'appuyer, mais en tout cas.
C'est bon. Second is Mr. Reagan's motion. It's in order, and it's received in a timely fashion. Mr. Reagan wishes to speak to it.
Mr. Chair, I wish to move the motion.
Okay. Any debate?
Amendment.
Amendment to the motion.
I would propose a friendly amendment, Mr. Chair, that after November 24, 2010, that we're getting rid of the rest.
Remaining words.
So the motion would be everything except that the committee also empowers the chair to take whatever actions are necessary, including the insurance of a summons to ensure the...
You want that deleted?
Deleted, yeah.
So the committee, sorry,
I would propose a friendly amendment if you want, but...
Yeah.
What is
Well,
the
it says that the committee orders that the Ontario Provincial Police provided with the details of all the costs associated with the GAG 20. Goes down the next line, next line, next line. The final line says the committee orders that this information be provided in both electronic and paper form by the 2 p.m. on Wednesday, November 24th. That's where it ends? So that's your motion. Yes, Mr. Workington.
A couple of things. I think it's now apparent to all of us, having understood that this information is not available immediately. That the date of November 24th is probably an unreasonable date. It's clear from what we've heard from OPP that, in fact, this information hasn't yet been compiled and therefore would be impossible to provide in that time frame. So, you know, we I think need to change either the date or our expectation of what is going to be brought forward by them. The other thing that we absolutely must include in this, if we're going to have a full airing of this issue, is the representative from the Ontario Provincial Cabinet, Rick Bartolucci, the minister who actually signed this contract. Of course, the OPP officials, the police force never signed the contract. To give some light as to why the dates were as stated in the contract, I think it would be imperative that we have a representative from the provincial government, and Rick Bartolucci is the minister who signed the contract, so to get some clarity as to if or not these dates were prescribed by him or appropriate for them. I think it's important that we call on them.
I'm working on the assumption that the calling of Mr. Rick Bartolucci is not received as a friendly amendment, or is it? Why?
Can we settle part first, because do we agree as a friendly amendment that we're deleting the rest after November 24th?
If the mover's already accepted that.
We're okay?
So that part's done.
Chairman, we can certainly discuss future witnesses, you know, whenever, right? I mean, at steering committee or committee later. But
are you prepared to
let's
accept
deal
that?
with this. Mr. Chairman, what I want to say is that, look, the OPP has indicated, right, it would have this information by December the 1st. Now, we've had 2 previous motions of this committee, I think one in September, one since then, asking for this information. All the other departments have provided to us. We've got it from the RCMP, we've got it from the Toronto Police, from CSIS, et cetera, okay? And it's hard for me to believe that they're going to have it December 1st, but they can't have it on November the 24th, 6 days or 7 days earlier. And, I mean, it's particularly hard to believe that there's no information that they can make available to us.
Well, you have seen the letter from the OPP. They do say that it will be available December the 1st. They don't say that it can be available before that date. It may be an issue of credibility in your mind, it may be an issue of credibility in other people's minds, but that is the response from the OPP to date. And just as for clarification for the chair, what is it that this motion adds to or takes away from the previous motion, other than the date?
This requires the OPP to provide us the information, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any, Mr. Workington?
That is my question too, Mr. Chair. As a matter of fact, this motion is basically redundant. We've passed a motion that basically prescribes this previously by this committee. That obviously we didn't support it because we knew that it was unreasonable. The Ontario Provincial Police have acknowledged that they will be forthcoming with that information, but that information is not available to them right now, so it would be impossible for them to pass it on to us. That having been said, it's absolutely redundant. It seems to be simply an issue of playing politics with a police force that I believe is independent. I believe it to be honorable. I believe it to be above reproach. And any suggestion that they're withholding this information for any other reason other than it's not available is preposterous. And so if the members opposite believe that they're withholding it for any other reason, that would be the only reason that I would believe that they're bringing forward this motion. And if they have any other suggestion, I have to vote against this unless they have any other rationale as to what this motion does, other than reiterates what they have already brought forward and have been responded to.
Regan.
There is a distinction between this motion and the last one. The last one, we requested the information, and now we're ordering that it be provided, and we have the ability to do that. This is the highest court of the land, Parliament. The second thing, of course, is that we don't know what will happen on December 1st, even. You know, the government receives the information on December the 1st. We don't know if they'll sit on it for months. So I think it's important that we get a hold of this information.
Any other interventions? Mr. Calandra.
I just wanted to place for the record that, of course, I'd be voting against this as the only member from Ontario here, with the exception of yourself. I find it almost preposterous that we're suggesting that the Ontario Provincial Police are a corrupt organization that is somehow trying to mislead Parliament. And I'll always stand up for the good people of the Ontario Provincial Police, who gave some extraordinary testimony here, who did really good work during the G8 and G20, and now to suggest that they're deliberately holding back information for some nefarious purposes. I suppose it's easy for members from other parts of the country to sling that type of mud, but those of us in Ontario are quite proud of our provincial police force and quite confident in their ability to get the information that is asked for them, that was signed by their Liberal provincial member or Liberal provincial minister many months in advance of the G8 and the G20.
We're all proud of the OPP. Now, let me first. Is there any other interventions? Then the first issue is to deal with the amendment, and the amendment is a friendly amendment. Can I assume that we can just immediately go to the main motion? Is that fair?
We have a vote, a voice vote, a
recorded
vote. A recorded vote, pardon me.
A recorded vote.
On the main motion? On
the main motion as was read to you, and is everybody familiar with the main motion at this point? Okay. Then, Monsieur Greffier, would you call out the names, please?
Mr. Calandra. Mr. Calkins.
No.
Monsieur Gould.
No.
Monsieur Petit.
No.
Mr. Walkington.
No.
Monsieur Coder.
Même si je suis du Québec, oui.
Even though I'm from Quebec, yes.
Madame Bourgeois.
Oui.
Monsieur Lemay.
Oui.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
5 against 5.
The suspense is killing me. The motion passes. The final bit before. I see we're really running up against time. Mr. Martin, I know you were quite anxious to revive your motion that was, I think, put before the committee, but I don't believe that we dealt with it. I think that's correct?
No, you're incorrect. It was dealt with and passed.
It was dealt with and passed.
And you were directed to report to Parliament that we recommend, with all due respect, we recommend the government puts a moratorium on all construction contracts associated with Parliament Hill.
There was no.
And I notice you've written a second report of this committee and still failed to even mention a motion that was properly dealt with before this committee.
The clerk informs me, and I apologize, Mr. Martin, but that there was no actual specific direction for the chair to report that motion to the House. And I could stand to be corrected, But if you wish to revive that, may I suggest that you bring it before the committee possibly as early as Thursday?
No, I don't intend to move it. How else could you recommend, how else can the committee recommend to government that they put a moratorium if it's not reported by the chair to Parliament? I mean, and I'm not going to put another notice of motion in to move a motion that I already properly served notice and had it voted on and passed. It seems you're reluctant to actually implement the will of the committee.
Just receiving instructions from the clerk as to the appropriate way to do it, and that would be that this committee direct the chair to make to have a report filed on the House. So,
well, that's what the motion was supposed to do. Well, let's vote on it now. We'll direct you right now. You could make manifest the actual intent of that motion by voting on it again right here and now.
Madame Bourgeois.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Martin is right. I made the suggestion, and Mr. Martin added a time period for the moratorium, and we were really under the impression that you were going to inform the House. So we would ask you to do that, please. Thank you.
A touch of a miscommunication between the chair and the committee. Is it the will of the committee that I report Mr. Martin's motion to the House? Not hearing any negative, then that's what we'll do. Thank you. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.